If you are new to the channel, my name is Mark. This is ToastDragonFantasy, and if you've been wondering where I've been for the past couple of weeks and are expecting me to tell you where I've been for the past couple of weeks, you'd be wrong. I'm not going to tell you, because it's none of your goddamn motherfucking business. Do you understand me, you smelly idiots? You're probably wondering why I just told you that in such an aggressive manner. The reason I told you in that manner is because I am a badass. I do many badass things. So that's why I told you in that manner. And it got me thinking, what other badasses are there out there in the world of literature? And I've come up with 5, and I'm gonna talk to you about them. Five fellow badasses that from some of my favourite books. I haven't really ranked them in terms of who is the greatest badass, but luckily Bigwig, my colleague on this channel, he gave me a new rating system which he'd like me to try out. So we'll try that out. We'll see how that goes. Never used it before, so I don't know how it's going to turn out basically, but we'll see. I guess before I start talking about the badasses themselves, we should define exactly what a badass is, and in order to do this, I'm going to turn to that fabled source of knowledge, Urban Dictionary. Okay, so according to UrbanDictionary.com, there are 7 rules for being a badass. The first rule is not to talk about being a badass. Fairly straightforward. Number 2 is it does not try to be a badass. He simply is a badass. Number 3 is for them to always be themselves. Number 4, badasses will always push themselves to be better, no matter how hard it gets. Number 5, a badass is not a jerk. He doesn't prey on the weak and is kind to those who needs it. Number 6, a badass knows their limits. They don't try and kill themselves for no good reason. And number 7, a badass does not go looking for a fight. So I'm going to use those 7 rules to help me with my breakdown of these badasses. So the first badass that I'm going to talk about is my most favourite book character of all time. He appears in this book here. Arlen Bales is my first badass. The reason why he is, in my opinion, a badass is because from a very young age he was extremely stubborn. He never gave up. He was never afraid to kind of stand his corner and stand ground and stuff like that. And as he grew older, he never gave up in looking for ways to defeat demons, which is the terror in this book series. And there's one particular incident in The Painted Man, which is his first appearance, which I consider especially badass, which is where he eats a body part of one of the demons. I won't go into any more detail in case you've not read it. But yeah, that was a particularly badass moment, I feel, in Arlen Bales' life. And in general, he's just kind of remained true to that throughout the series. You know, he's still extremely stubborn, but he's very loyal, kind to those who needs it, encourages those to stand on their own 2 feet rather than have him save them all the time. So yeah, he's most definitely a badass. And according to Bigwig's rating, he's worth 4 John Cenas. That's what it says. So Arlen Bales is worth 4 John Cenas in the badass ranking. Number 2 is probably the least well known of my badasses on this countdown. It is David from The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. He is one of the 12, I believe, librarians that have been entrusted with the secrets of the universe, basically. So all 12 combined have the knowledge to make or break the universe, basically. And his particular specialism is war and warcraft and warfare and all that kind of stuff. And being entrusted with that kind of responsibility has led him to be a little bit unhinged, has led him to do some very savage things, so he most definitely ticks rule number 2, I believe, in that he just is a badass. He stays true to himself throughout the entire book, and he commits, in perhaps the most badass act imaginable. He commits all his atrocities whilst wearing a pink tutu. So, it is with little surprise that David from the Library of Mount Char receives a rating of 10 Chuck Norrises. Well, does that make him more of a badass than Arlen with his 4 John C? I don't know. I'm gonna have to get to the bottom of this ranking system. It doesn't make any sense. The third badass on my list, it comes from Game of Thrones. There's a load of characters that could be included in this list from Game of Thrones, but I'm going to go with Arya Stark. From the very first book, when she's just a little girl, you know, she's very determined, always seeking adventure, and, you know, very scrappy, and it's clear that she's not going to fall into the kind of the easy life. Is destined for that kind of rough life, and as the books go on, and obviously from the TV series as well, it's very, very clear that Arya ends up living a pretty pretty rough life, a pretty badass life. And as she does get older, her kill count, if you like, includes a lot of notable figures, and that just adds to her kind of aura, which she kind of grows throughout the series. But at the same time, she's still very loyal deep down, and you know, it is that kind of quality that shines through, certainly in the later books, in the later series. So for that reason, Arya Stark receives 3.5 Jackie Chans. That's Arya's badass rating. The fourth badass on this list is Tannen from the Gentleman Bastard series. I've talked about the series on a couple of occasions actually, because it is one of my favourite on-running series. Tannen is the best friend of Locke Lamora, and he is the most loyal character in known literature. He is brutal when it comes to fighting, but it's always for good. It's never for, you know, vengeance. It's never for to be nasty or evil. It's usually to protect Locke, to be fair. But he's actually, of all the characters on this list, probably the kindest. As hard as he is, and as you know, nails and tough and gnarly as he can be, he's actually a very kind person, and you know that fulfills rule number 5 of Urban Dictionary's badass checklist, in that he's very kind to those who needs it, and it's just wonderful to read how loyal he is. Every character, every person in the world needs a Tannen in their life, basically, and that is why Tannen receives a rating of 7 Muhammad Alis. I mean, that must be more than 4 John Cena's, but maybe not as much as 3.5 Jackie Chan's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he's got. I don't know what he's done with this countdown right now, with this rating system. It's rubbish. And finally, my 5th badass on this list. No badass list could be complete without Logan Ninefingers. Another one of my favourite characters ever. He's one of the main characters from the first Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. And in this book we meet Logan as he strives to return to his friends, I think. Well, I think it's still up north. On the way he goes through a lot of hardships and things like that, and it's very, very clear that he's just a rugged, gnarly, tough man who just doesn't seem to die, despite the fact that he is put through the ringer in this series. Brutal in a fight, absolutely ruthless. But again, when he's not fighting, has a very almost calm temperament in a lot of ways. You know, he's often mistaken as being quite simple, you know, kind of a barbarian type figure, which in some ways he is. But I think he has his own kind of intelligence until he switches and he becomes the Bloody Nine, which is a whole different problem. I have to admit that I got very excited and giddy whenever those scenes came up in the books, despite the fact that I knew that it was just not going to end pleasant to anyone who got close to him when he turns into the Bloody Nine. But he basically ticks all the rules of those Urban Dictionary, you know, lore, and that is why Logan Ninefingers has received a badass rating of 200 Beyoncés? Anyway, ignoring the shoddy countdown and the ridiculous rating system, I hope you enjoyed that. 5 badasses to rival myself. Let me know in the comments who your favourite badasses are. Who in your favourite books can be classified as a badass. If you enjoyed today's video, please do not hesitate to give it a thumbs up, because that will tell me how well it has done. If you're new to the channel, if you've only just discovered me today, check out some of my other videos, and if they entertain you as well, subscribe to the channel and you'll be notified when more booktube, authortube and skit type content come your way. That is all I have for you today. So, with that being said, my name is Mark, this is ToastDragonFantasy, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. Goodbye.